Hey, what's up, everyone? And thank you for tuning in to Until There's a Cure's Empowering Voices series. My name's Dhruv, and today I'm joined by special guest Ben Needham-Wood. How's it going, Ben?
It's going really well, Drew. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. All right, let's get started. What was it like growing up in Massachusetts?
Massachusetts was great. I was a fall baby, and so having Massachusetts in the fall when the leaves are changing and the seasons just waking up was always my happy place. Played a lot of soccer, super active. And when I was 5 years old, I started taking dance classes. And pretty much growing up, it was a really active lifestyle, lots of outdoors time, and a lot of space to start really just discovering what I was excited about for life. So it was really great.
hmm You mentioned that you started ballet when you were 5. That's crazy. So how did you kind of like get involved with that?
Yeah, I actually had a babysitter who was a dance teacher. And so it was thanks to her that I discovered dance. My parents brought me to see one of her recitals, and I was like, "Oh, mom, can I take dance classes?" And at first, she was like, "Oh, that's cute," but it wasn't until actually 2 years later when my little sister started taking dance classes that I was copying everything through the window. And the teacher invited me to come in, and I was just hooked. The feeling of being able to be like physically expressive, move through the space, and it felt super athletic and rewarding. And so it kind of checked all the boxes that I really loved.
hmm That's amazing. It was like love at first sight.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then going into high school, what kinds of like extracurriculars were you involved with?
Dance was really the primary focus for me in many ways. Not just ballet. I did start in ballet, but there was also I discovered hip hop when I was in middle school, and I
Mhm.
suddenly had this very bipolar pull within the dance industry as far as which influence was really shaping my movement vocabulary. And so I tried a whole bunch of different dance styles. Soccer was still something that was a big part of my life, and I did do track and field for a little bit. So those were really prominent. But dance as a form of expression, as an athletic pursuit, really became the driving focus for so much of what I was doing in my high school years.
I'm a huge soccer fan myself. So what position did you play in soccer? I'm just wondering.
Oh yeah, and so I started off actually as a sweeper, and then as our team continued to grow, I slowly got moved up, and up. And so I went from being sweeper to being stopper to then playing midfield, and ended up as a striker my last couple of years.
There we go. Getting all the
Yeah,
glory. It's worth
yeah,
it.
exactly.
And then after high school, where did you end up going? Like, did you go the traditional route or did you go somewhere else?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I actually, by some, I had a very untraditional path. I did apply to, actually, I auditioned for a bunch of different dance companies coming out of high school. And while I did get a couple offers, it wasn't, nothing really felt like the right fit for me at that time. And by chance, there happened to be a faculty member from the University of Cincinnati's College Conservatory of Music who heard that I was looking for what my next chapter was going to be.
Mhm.
And I ended up actually getting a letter in the mail inviting me to join CCM's dance program in the fall. And they gave me a full ride. And so, with that, I decided this was kind of a moment for me to recognize that taking time to really train myself to get to um, more of a platform that really helped me feel proud of the work that I was doing that could open up the doors that are ultimately going to serve the longevity of my career.
Mhm.
That had a lot of appeal. So I decided to go ahead and I joined the University of Cincinnati's College Conservatory of Music. And what they had that was really great is they had a program where you could actually dance professionally with a company while earning your degree. And so I actually was only on campus for 2 years, and then I joined the Louisville Ballet and spent my last 2 years of my undergraduate degree actually dancing for the Louisville Ballet full time.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like free tuition and
Yeah,
doing love? I mean, that's perfect, right? And then
exactly.
you mentioned the Louisville Ballet. So how is that kind of like experience been for you, or how was that?
Yeah, Louisville Ballet became my home. I absolutely fell in love with the city. The company became my family. It was a really amazing place to be. One of the key components of that is that the director of the company, when I was there, Bruce Simpson, was an incredible mentor. And so when I joined the company in 2008, I was brand new. It was my first full-time contract. And Bruce was incredible at helping to kind of guide me through that process where I felt like I could develop my own artistic voice. And I understood the learning curve that goes with a career in the arts. And so he was really supportive within that whole environment. And the dancers that were in the company very quickly became my closest friends. It had a very much a family atmosphere to it, but everyone was so dedicated to their craft that I felt like it continued to inspire more growth than I ever would have expected to find.
Yeah. If you had to think back to your favorite performance, which one was it?
Ooh. So there are several. From my time in Louisville, my probably the height of my time there was one of my final performances with them. I was cast as Romeo in Romeo and Juliet. And there was a lot of significance for me in that role because that, since the time I had been a small kid, was the role that for me was the pinnacle of classical ballet, where I felt if I can perform as Romeo in a professional company, I made it.
Mhm.
And so to get that opportunity was huge, and it had a real personal significance. I had my mother passed when I was 25 to breast cancer,
Mhm.
and the last thing I was able to share with her before she was no longer responsive in that transition was, "Mom, I just got a call from our director. They wanted me to let you know that I've been cast as Romeo." And so that was one of the last sentiments I was able to share with my mom. And she gave me this big smile and said, "I'm so proud of you." And then being in that ballet and performing in front of 3,000 people and having the stage lights above you feel like these very ethereal lights that
Mhm.
are so resonant to that transition for my mom at that time.
Yeah.
It just felt like it brought my personal life and my performance life together so powerfully.
Mhm. That's an amazing story. Um, when it came to Romeo and Juliet, like after you did that performance, were you still like fully committed to continuing with Louisville Ballet, or did your interest kind of go down because of how like perfect that moment was?
So it was a big transition year for sure, and I think part of what my mom always inspired within us as our kids was the perspective that you should always be pursuing your greatest self. You should always try to self-actualize and see what you're capable of.
Mhm.
And so at that moment, what I recognized is this was a big transition for my mom, and I hit that pinnacle that I believed I could find within classical ballet. So then the question became, what more is possible? And it was really that very question for me that inspired me to recognize that while that was the pinnacle that I felt I could hit as a classical ballet dancer,
Mhm.
I had a huge passion in contemporary choreography and contemporary ballet. And so I decided to see what other opportunities might be out there, diving more into that realm. And so I did audition for a company called Smuin, which is based here in San Francisco, and was really lucky to have actually been offered a contract from that. And so the year after I had that performance of Romeo, I did leave Louisville and move to San Francisco to start my career with the Smuin Contemporary Ballet.
Nice. So you mentioned how you kind of took a step back and you wanted to go into choreography. So how was that experience different from actually being the performer?
Oh, that is dramatically different. The biggest thing that I would offer in that reflection is that as a performer, you're in the studio, you're working as hard as you can to make sure that you are appeasing the choreographer, that you're delivering whatever the repertoire is, the way that the people in the front of the room are wanting you to work.
Mhm.
And so while you're in the studio, you're very much meeting someone else's perception. But then once you get on stage, it is yours, and you have full reins to take control of that choreography and present it with the fullest of your artistry. So that means that once you get to the stage, it's all yours. However, choreography is the exact opposite. You have all this time in the studio space to be in complete control of what's happening, to really understand how much you can shape and redirect the energy and the movement. But then once the piece is put on stage, you no longer have any control over what happens, and you have to kind of let go of it and just see how the performers are going to work with the choreography developed with them, but
Mhm.
also how the audience is going to receive it. And so it's this whole other side of the artistic voice, where you actually have to let go of it in a different way, that I think is really special.
Yeah.
But the other big shift between the two, I believe, as far as my own artistic voice is concerned, is that as a dancer, I felt like I could find my fullest capacity within my own body. But choreographically, it's exciting for me because I'm not limited to just what my body can do, but you can choreograph things where people can work together and they can put forward something that I might not physically be capable of. So it's fun to imagine how much further other artists can go with a different facility.
Mhm. I know that whenever I let go of control, like at first it's like super stressful because you're like, I don't know
Yeah.
what's gonna happen. I don't know whether they're gonna do this correctly. So how did you kind of get out of that stressful stage and kind of just like let it happen?
I think a huge part of that is trusting the other artists. And so I've been really lucky that many of the artists that I've been able to work with over the years are people that I trust implicitly. They've they've been incredible friends, they've been great mentors. I've learned a lot from all of them. And so when you get to work with people who you really trust what they're going to bring to the stage, what they're going to bring to the piece, it makes it very easy to almost let go a little bit more and be like, I'd say you do you
Mhm.
and see what's possible within that.
Yeah. And then I know that during the summer of 2015, you released the new TV feature, Bass Ballet.
Yes.
So how did that come to be?
That was an incredible journey. So while I was in SMU, and I became best friends with my honorary brother, Weston Kruko. And we were having dinner and drinks with his dad one night, Mike Kruko, the broadcaster for the Giants.
Yeah.
And Mike was like, we really need to make a film about ballet and baseball and show how parallel those two things are, so we can really promote what you guys are doing. And we kind of thought like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, but never going to happen. And sure enough, he went ahead and made a pitch to Comcast Sports Network Bay Area, and they actually gave us a meeting, and we were able to present our idea to them. And they at first were a little bit concerned. They were like, well, I don't know if this is going to work with our audiences, so let's do a little test run. So we created a short 8-minute segment that really focused on the relationship Wes had with his dad, while addressing the parallel of their two athletic disciplines, dance and baseball. And then that did really well. And so they gave us the green light to go ahead and produce a 30-minute feature that could really highlight the athleticism of dance. And
Mhm.
so then we spent a couple of years really just developing this thing, working it out to figure out how best can we translate what we do as dance artists for more of a baseball demographic, for audiences that might not yet be so familiar with the athleticism of what we do.
Yeah.
And the people that kind of championed that effort moving forward were just absolutely incredible, the best cheerleaders you could look for. And so we had a ton of fun getting to work with the Giants organization to bring bass ballet to life.
Yeah. It's like so amazing because like you wouldn't think baseball and ballet, right? Like are so like
Right.
yeah, immediately. But then after this TV feature, it just makes sense. How did you see the impact of bass ballet in the community around you?
It was really interesting. The community immediately around us were people who, I think Wes and I just gravitated towards a lot of people who already understood the athleticism of dance. And so the response we had from our immediate circle was, wow, you guys did a great job putting this forward in a context that really makes sense.
Mhm.
And so we felt like we were able to kind of translate this conversation we've already been having for years in a way that really resonated with a lot of our inner circle. But some of the more beautiful reflections, I think, or equally beautiful, just in a different way, came from the outer circles of people that we didn't know who ended up seeing the film. And we ended up getting emails and correspondence from different people who had seen it either on Virgin America's flights or watching it on NBC Sports Bay Area. And that feedback to recognize, wow, I've never seen dance in this light. Wow, I never realized that there was so much discipline and hard work that went into both of these things. It actually did. We found some new audiences starting to come to see SMU and contemporary ballet from that. And we did actually feel a change in the conversation around the value that this art can hold within our society and within our community.
Mhm. That's amazing. kind of changing directions here to Until
Yeah.
There's a Cure. How did you get involved with Until There's a Cure?
So Base Ballet was really what introduced us to Until There's a Cure. Working with the Giants organization, Until There's a Cure has been partnered with them for many years, and it was thanks to that partnership that Wes and I were introduced to Nora.
Hmm.
And as soon as she heard what we were doing, and we were able to sit down and talk with her about the mission that Until There's a Cure holds, it became so clear that this was a partnership we wanted to see how much support we could drum up for the work you're all doing at Until. Um, I think that is especially salient right now, given that we're still in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, and the recognition of how devastating a health crisis can be on a community is now more apparent than I think most of us ever knew.
Hmm.
And when you think back to the history of AIDS and HIV, and you recognize how aggressive it was, especially in those early forms, and how it was unfortunately stigmatized in such a negative way, I think that it is more paramount than ever that we start to change that conversation and show how important it is for us to really find a way to get in front of this cause and find a way to support those who are currently living with HIV and AIDS, in order to try to find a way through it.
Yeah.
So that it was just, I think one of the things we learned from the arts is our ability to empathize and to want to support and care for our communities. And so when we recognize how important this cause is, look at the incredible work that Until There's a Cure is doing, it just made us want to use our art form in whatever way we could to amplify the work that is being done to support these people in need.
Hmm. That's amazing. I know that you've also taken this giving back approach and implemented it into your own life.
Mhm.
Would you like to talk about kind of your, um, uh, I guess, charitable work?
Oh yeah. So basically, with the pandemic, that did shift our entire industry within the dance and performance arts world.
Hmm.
And so the options that I thought I was going to be transitioning my life to were not quite the same as how they had originally mapped out. And so it the silver lining is it gave me the space to sit back and think about what mattered most. And using an example of our relationship with Until There's a Cure, it what stood out to me so much was that that was the type of work that felt the most gratifying for me and felt like the most purposeful expression that our art form can offer, is amplifying causes in need.
Hmm.
And so I decided to found my own company called Redirecting Dance. And what we are working to do right now is develop this company in such a way that we can create dance films that amplify important social causes. We're still very much in our development phase, ramping up, but I was really grateful to Amy Cyrus Imagery, which is another contemporary ballet company based here in San Francisco, for actually giving us a platform to start developing our ideas about how these films might work with their Sketch Films Red Thread series. And so we've been doing a lot of development to understand how best we can use dance as an art form amplified through film in order to share individual stories of people impacted by social causes that we will then share with communities in order to educate and develop empathy.
Hmm.
So that has really become my calling in the last year and a half or a couple of years, that I realize in hindsight has actually dated back for many years prior, all the way back probably to when I was in high school. And so I'm really proud that we now have Redirecting Dance moving forward, and that we're going to start doing this work to see how we can use this art form in a really meaningful and impactful way.
Hmm. That's amazing. Um, I really like how you're kind of combining ballet, which is obviously what you love, with giving back to your community, which is amazing to see.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
to wrap it up, I would like to end this interview with a lighthearted question. If you
All
could be
right.
any animal, what animal would you be?
Oh, you're talking to an animal nerd, so this is a tricky one. So my favorite animal as a kid was an ocelot, which is a little jungle cat that's got like Bengal type stripes. And what I loved about them was that they were kind of like small and nimble, but they were also like fierce hunters, and they were kind of unassuming all at the same time. And so there was something about that agility, but then they're also very cute, and so they look like they could be a pet at the same time.
Yeah.
They just kind of floated right into the middle of all these things. But so I absolutely love ocelots, and so I think, wow, yeah, because I would like, there are different things I love in like ospreys or like snow leopards or or otters or all these other different animals too. But
Yeah.
I think I might have to go with an ocelot.
All right. Yeah, that's a very different answer, but very like interesting because most people are like lion, tiger,
Yeah.
a lot. I
Yeah.
all right. Thank you so much for your time and for joining me on this interview.
It's my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me.
And that'll be it. Bye.